Hello, everybody. We are back again with this collaboration between me and Alan from the Library of Alexandria. We don't have a real working title for this, but I think you called it, let's see, Michael and Alan talk about video games.
That's working title, yes.
Yeah, we worked our way. We're trying to go through the top 10 RPGs for us each. Unfortunately or fortunately, we only got through 3 in the last stream.
3.
So we're setting the goal low, and we're just going to talk about some more this stream, and then we'll end when we end. But this is something that's really, really fun for me. It's beneficial for me, and so I think this might be something that we think about doing more often. We'll see.
Yes. Yes.
Do you want to start us off today? I don't remember the order that we went in, but I'll go ahead and let you start us off with number 4.
Oh, are you sure you don't want to start? Like we started with you last time.
We'll have you start. Also, I'll go ahead and reiterate. These are not ordered in any way. We're just talking about 10 of our favorite RPGs.
All right. Okay, so then I'll go ahead and so the one my first one for today is going to be, and it's very timely considering that the re-release of all 3 of these games comes out in a week and a half. I'm going to say Mass Effect, more specifically Mass Effect 2. If I have to pick one of the series, and that I think Mass Effect 3 is as close to a perfect game as you can get that does not in any way stick the landing. And just the last 10 minutes of Mass Effect 3 have kept it from being my favorite. So I'm going to say Mass Effect 2. It's just like, I always liked Mass Effect, which is weird because I like fantasy more than sci-fi, but I always liked the Mass Effect series better as a BioWare property than I liked the Dragon Age series. And I think it's just because the quality of the Mass Effect was more consistent through all 3 games.
Absolutely.
And I also really liked the companions in Mass Effect, because what BioWare did with that is they kept enough of your original companions to where it felt linked. Like by Inquisition, first of all, you're not the same character. That's the other thing, is you're not the Grey Warden through any of the 3 games. You're the Grey Warden in the first one, you're Hawk in the second one, and you're the Inquisitor in the third one. But you're Shepard in these 3, Shepard. You're these in these 3 games, and so you have a lot of the same companions: Garrus, Tali, Ashley or Caden, whichever one you didn't nuke comes back. All of these, and Liara, you see her, but all these same companions. And it was just the story to the world building with like all of these different races, like the Hanar, the jellyfish, like merchants, and then the Elcor, who only speak, they can't express emotion. They have to go, sadness. I don't like that. Like they have to say in parentheses their emotion.
Plainly, we discovered our vocal expression was not enough to convey the feelings of our conversations to other species.
And it just tells such a good story with such great characters. And it's also the only game that I played Renegade in. I always play like Paragon, the good guy in RPGs, making the good choices. But for some reason, for Mass Effect, I just had my Shepard be a douchebag. Like he punches people and yells at them and is like, you need to do this. Because it's not really a bad guy. You're just super abrasive and mean. Like you're not actually making bad decisions. You're still good Shepard.
Well, it depends on your morality of punching reporters. But
yeah, I 100% punched that reporter. That reporter was insufferable. So I absolutely hit that reporter. It pleased me greatly.
All 3 times.
And it just, the characters are just so good. And it's so much fun. I don't think a lot of the storylines in 3 were wrapped up the way I want them to. I think the Elusive Man is a completely missed opportunity. I think they wasted that plot thread that was set up in 2. Like the Elusive Man doesn't really have a conclusion in 3, like his plot. And so that's that makes me sad. But Morden and Urdnot Rex from 1 and Morden Solus from 2 may be 2 of my favorite video game companions ever. Like I will sit there in 1, if you talk to Rex in your ship, like after you've gone through all the dialogue, you'll just talk to him and you'll just go Rex, and he'll go Shepard. And then I just did that like 10 minutes straight. Rex, Shepard. Rex, Shepard. Like just over and over.
Rex, Shepard.
And then Morden has the parody of Pirates of Penzance Modern Major General, where he sings,
Oh,
I am
yes.
a model of a scientist Solarian. And I'm just like, yes. And he's so weird, and he talks like really fast, and like his plot line, his backstory is surprisingly dark. Like, he's one of the authors of the Krogan Genophage.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's so much I love about Mass Effect that I am just so excited that they have re-released it. And I'm going to get to play all three of them again. And in one, the Mako, that horribly like physics-defying go-kart that you land on the planets, that just, you can literally climb a 90-degree cliff on this thing. I love it so much. Have you played you play the Mass Effects?
Yeah, that was actually on my list as well. But Mass Effect is the first and probably the best example of a game that I've seen that actually remembers your choices in ways that feel meaningful. And like, yes, they could have done more, but still, by the time you get to 2 and 3, and even seemingly small things plus the large things that you've set out to change, when they happen or they come into fruition in the big, final climax or whatever of 3, I was like, this is what I've been wanting with games that have choices for so long. I want this game that I played 7 years ago to matter now.
100%, yeah.
And it's different for different people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I wish Dragon Age, I wish they do a fantasy game like that, like multiple releases, remembering your choices. And I haven't seen it done since Mass Effect.
No,
like,
I think it's probably a pain in the butt to do.
I'm sure it is, because like there are conversations you can have in 3 based on something you decided in 1.
Yep.
So it's so good. Who did you? Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, there are entire species that could be dead in 3 if you did not make certain choices in 1.
Seriously, who did you sacrifice in 1? Did you save? Who'd you give the nuke to? Kaiden or Ashley?
Ashley. I was not aware I was making a binary choice. I thought I was doing a like, hey, it seems like we kind of might have time to do both these things, so let me try. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, she's dead. I guess I messed up.
I sacrificed Kaiden gladly, and you know what? I'm gonna sacrifice Kaiden again when I play it again.
I don't like either of them. They're both kind of bad.
Well, Ashley is slightly better. Well, no. Anyway, she's a huge I know a ton of people hate Ashley because she's a horrible space racist. Like, at least in one of them she is.
I forgot what Kaiden's major beef was, because she's like the space racist and he's something else.
Boring. That's his. He is a biotic.
his greatest sin.
Like, the problem is that he's not interesting. He's just like, hey, I'm a biotic.
But he was like the first level, like the first generation of biotics, so he was constantly in pain. So I had some sympathy for him.
Yes, you know what? I put him out of his misery by letting him hold the nuke. He's no longer in pain. He's now vapor.
You didn't mention Thane though, and that was a little bothersome to me.
I am not a Thane stan like the rest of the Mass Effect community. I never used Thane.
I don't know how much I used him, but his story was still so cool.
His story is cool.
Anytime there's a creature with multiple types of eyelids that can flip, different ways, I like it.
Yeah, and his what race was Thane? Do you remember what the name of his race is?
No, there's no way. You also didn't mention Garrus either.
Okay, I was gonna mention Garrus because Garrus is someone I'm gonna use in all 3 games this time. I did not use Garrus in 1. I used Rex because I gotta use Rex, and Rex I used Tally. Because I was the biotic, and so I had Tally as my engineer, the tech, and then Rex was my physical. I wasn't biotic. I was like half and half, like Vanguard. I was the one that can do the charge, and then in 2, I used Morden because must, and then Garrus, who was awesome in 2. And then in 3, I used Garrus, and I don't remember who I used in 3. I think I may have swapped in people in and out.
I think I swapped in people through all 3 of them.
Not me, but Garrus is such a him and Tally are the only ones that are with you with all 3 games, and Garrus is so cool. I love Garrus. I like you mentioned before, the world building and such in Mass Effect is so
like immersive that it draws you in. Like, I am not the type of person that normally full completes games or cares about that type of thing. But when I was playing all 3 Mass Effect games, I wanted to do the side quests. I wanted to unlock the backstories for these characters because I would freaking read the stupid codex because I just wanted to. Actually, Mass Effect is, well, not now, but for a while, it was the only video game I'd ever played where I'd read all of the companion novels, because I actually read a bunch of those as well, which are pretty good.
I haven't read any. I've never read a video game novelization except there's a book of Blaster Master when I was like really young. I read that one.
Was it just a math book?
No, it was like a first person blaster. Like it was like some kid fell into the Blaster Master game. It was very weird.
Okay. Yeah, the Mass Effects have been my favorite of the companion novels that I've read, but yeah, I was absolutely drawn in by the way the history of how the aliens first met, and then the significant, like, I guess it's weird because the significance of you becoming, what are they called, specters? The significance of becoming a specter in Mass Effect 1 is so huge, but you don't realize it when you become one. Yeah. And then when you're replaying the game, you're like, oh, frick, the fact that I'm the first human specter is a big deal. I think maybe they got the Grey Warden gravitas better in Dragon Age 1. But
I agree with that.
Realizing that how big of a deal it is that you're the first human specter, and then if you actually read the books like a nerd and realize that like the human alien wars with this whole thing, and it's such a great series.
Oh, it's so good. Real quick, speaking of Grey Wardens, did you see that Dragon Age 4 is probably going to bring back the Wardens? Like you're probably going to be a Warden again.
Yeah, I did, but are you not excited about that? If I let my expectations be but for that game, I would love to be proven wrong. That's my theory.
I mean that's true. We'll have to play it. Simultaneously. And
yeah, I DNF'd Inquisition, so
that's wise. Inquisition, it lacked. It wasn't fun.
It lacked a draw at all for me.
Yeah,
I was like walking around picking up plants, going, "What do I do?"
It was. I did not love. I finished it, but I did not love Inquisition, and the bad guy was lame. The bad guy in 2 was Anders, so that was cool. And then the 1, it was Logain, who was cool, and then it's some freaking Darkspawn thing, and I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about Darkspawn. I guess it wasn't Logain in the first one. Logain eventually joins you, doesn't he? Right at the end.
Well, not if you kill him.
Oh, I didn't kill him.
I killed him right in front of his daughter, splashed his blood on her face, and I didn't care.
Did you really?
Dude, one of my favorite things about this is obviously a throwback to last week. One of my favorite things about Dragon Age is how in the cutscenes, if you choose to kill someone or if you finish a battle, people will be soaked in blood. Just like
when they're just talking, they're having conversations.
Yeah, they're just full on covered in blood and they don't care. So you kill Logain in front of his daughter, she's completely coated in blood, just talking like it's not a big deal.
Did you make Alistair go back as king, or did he continue as a warden?
I made him as a king.
That's cool.
I figured it was best.
Oh, sorry. No,
sorry. Back to Mass Effect.
I agree. It was. I mean, it's just so good, and like all of the. First of all, Thane is a Drell, by the way. And they're like something. He's got some disease, doesn't he? Or maybe all the Drell have diseases. I don't know.
I think he does. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I didn't. I mean, Thane was fine. I liked him better than some of the other companions. Like, I never really loved the whatever Liara was.
I liked them. They were cool.
Who are those people? The blue people? I don't know.
It's gonna kill me because
but I like Liara from the first one, and then she's like she becomes like the underworld boss, which is freaking cool.
Yeah.
But I did not like the 2 in Mass Effect 2. Samara and then Morgaine or something like that, like the evil one.
Well, they're bad. Yeah,
I didn't love that. She's a freaking Asari. Thank you. An Asari. It was just so good.
What was your stance on Jack? Jack.
Yeah. She sat in the back and she entered my party to finish her personal quest so that all of my party members would be saved. Otherwise, she sat very, very deep in my ship, so I did not have to listen to her. That's what happened to Jack. So
do you want to hear my weirdest Mass Effect 2 story about how I accidentally romanced Jack?
No, Michael! Michael, you romanced Jack?
He was a character I didn't like, right? But after every single... This is so dumb, and I don't know how this happened. After every single quest, period, like even when they didn't add anything, I would talk to every single member of the party, right? And I would respond to the people as I could, and I was always basically hitting on Liara because I thought Liara was cool.
Yeah.
Every time I talked to Jack, she would be like, "Oh, I'm so miserable," and I was like, "Screw you, I don't care." Somehow that led to me getting to the final scene and her walking in and being like, "What is wrong with you?" And then I get the Paramore romance achievement for romancing Jack by telling her to shut up the whole game. There's probably there's so many problematic elements to that.
She hates it. You have to be nice to Jack.
I've never accidentally romanced someone before.
No, I was always nice to her so that she would yell at me, and I'd be like, "Hey, cool, enjoy the engine room because that's where you're gonna stay." I hated Jack.
I also hated Jack.
Jack is exactly what we were talking about last week with freaking the Kingdom Hearts. Like, they put her in for the sole purpose of being super edgy. Like you want to have a strong female character? That's fine. Liara fits that bill, as do many of the other female characters in this game. Jack is literally you being like, "Oh, look at how she's so tough and leans against the wall, and she's just like can't talk to anybody.
They were trying
everything.
They were trying to create the complete opposite of the British chick in the white suit.
Oh, of Miranda?
Yes, yeah. Miranda.
Thinking Miranda, that's who I romanced.
Yeah, that makes more sense, because she was genetically created to be that option.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. This is the most important question. Did you subscribe to the indoctrination theory?
That game theory posited after.
I don't know if did game theory talk about it? I heard lots of other people talking about it. And it's also the maybe worst PR decision I've ever seen in any game ever was when they released Mass Effect 3. The game had an ending that was almost universally criticized.
It was universally despised.
They decided to remake the ending. It was still dumb. They didn't really change anything that was bad. They just changed it so it was still bad. And then someone, and I don't remember the first video I saw, came up with the theory that the entire ending you were indoctrinated and you were being mind controlled that last part of the game. And there's actually a significant amount of proof that proves that. And that started gaining traction. And then for some reason, BioWare decided to be like, no, that's not the case. Like, why would you say no?
They should have leaned into that skid.
Why would you say no?
I remember that when they said, "Oh my gosh," I remember that.
They weren't planning on making any games after it at the time, so why would you say no? Just say yes. That's a way cooler ending.
It is way better. What color explosion did you get?
Green, because I'm the freaking
green.
I was like, I get, but which is not the cool ending if you're indoctrination. The indoctrination theory, you have to get the red ending, right?
That's where the humans die, right? Like, you kill the humans in red, you kill the Geth in blue, and then
it's where you side with the Reapers, because you're not really siding with the Reapers. You're if it's the indoctrination theory is my favorite thing to come out of video games, and then have the developers come out and be like, "No, this is not true." I'm like, I am so mad right now.
You don't understand how much, like, my buddy and I, when we heard they were re-releasing Mass Effect, we hoped against all hopes that they were going to take this second chance. They were granted a second, and not everybody gets a second chance. They were gifted it on a silver platter, and they did not remake the ending. Why?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Why?
Well, I remember playing 3 with my friend in tandem, and he beat it before me. And he was talking about how bad the ending was, and I was going into the ending, like literally before you get beamed up into that Reaper ship, and I'm like, dude, this game is flipping awesome. I have no idea what you're talking about, hating this ending. And then and then after you pass the elusive, you pass your like commander guy, whatever his name was. You pass Mufasa or something, and then you get to the top of the ship, and there's Space Boy. I was so confused. I hit the credits rolling in that game, and I put the controller down, called my friend. I was like, what did I just see? I have no idea what just happened.
It's all garbage.
Which is normally the type of choice that I praise. I normally praise the insane, bold choices that make no sense. But it ruined a series that was so good.
Literally, all those decisions you made came to nothing. And I think that's most people's problem, is that they made these games to where all of the decisions you make matter, and then it just, in the end, it literally doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing it's just stupid.
Like the Linkin Park song. Okay, so that's your
We've been talking about Mass Effect for 20 minutes.
Well, I figure we can get through, 2 games or whatever.
Oh, we got this, Michael. All right.
The next game I will talk about, because I will skip Mass Effect, because that was also on my list, is Diablo 2. Did you play Diablo 2?
I did, not to the extent that many people have played Diablo 2, but I did play Diablo 2. I was a who was the girl? Was that the archer? Was there a girl archer in that one?
In the first one. In the second one, the girl's the sorceress, I think.
Who was I? Maybe I was the barbarian. I think I was. I don't know. I did play Diablo 2.
So Diablo 2 was one of those games that I never would have experienced because my mom would never have let me buy that game based on the cover.
Yeah.
So I pulled probably a deceitful move as a child, but my friend had got it, didn't care about it. He got the battle chest, which had Diablo 1 and 2 in it. Didn't care about it and was like, dude, do you want this? And I was like, yes, let me take it. So I took the game, hid the cover and all of the strategy guides, and then was just playing the game. And then I convinced my dad to play the game, got my dad hooked, because the game itself, I mean, it's both incredibly dark and also not that dark if you don't think about it. And my dad is dyslexic and he doesn't read. So all he knows is we're just killing a bunch of demons or whatever. So then I play this game, get my dad hooked, and then by the time that my dad was hooked, it was like, oh, he can play that game, it's fine. But Diablo 2 was the game that, first of all, it was not my first Diablo-like. My first Diablo-like was the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers Game Boy Advance game, which is just a complete Diablo ripoff.
You and your Game Boy Advance games.
Dude, I played so much Game Boy Advance as a kid.
I didn't have a Game Boy Advance. I only had the original Fat Boy.
I bought the Game Boy Advance with my own paper route money. I was so proud of it.
Actually ran a paper route. I thought that's just like something they said in movies.
Well, it wasn't really a paper route, but I was a military kid, and we delivered like coupons every month to people. It was basically a paper route, but instead of papers, it was just coupons. But anyway, the Diablo 2 was the game that once I started playing Diablo 2, I convinced my friends to play it, and I spent an entire summer dragging my desktop to my friend's house every single day to plug it into his second monitor that he had there, and we would just play Diablo.
Why wouldn't you just leave it there if you're going the next day?
Well, because sometimes I had to, do homework or whatever at home. So first of all, it was back in the day where the desktop was not a massive thing. I never had a current computer until I became an adult. So it was old.
Same.
But it was like, I had a car and I had a job, but I just worked around my job, packed the computer up, go to my friend's house, play Diablo 2 nonstop. I actually never played BattleNet Diablo 2, which is how most people talk about it. But I played local co-op Diablo 2 with my dad, my brother, and my other friend an entire summer, like hundreds of hours.
That is awesome. I played the Amazon. I looked up the classes. The Amazon.
Okay, yeah.
She was the
archer. You're right.
Yeah, I used her. I remember I was not good at this game. Like I did play with my friends, not nearly as much as you did. I had some friends who were just like, they were playing Diablo 2 still, like long after Diablo 2 stopped being the current release. Like they played it.
Which is when I was playing it.
Crazy. Those games are that, like, wasn't that one of the first like games where you just go on a loop and just keep collecting loots? Like there's
I think
a lot
the first game was it's a thing that has been completely cloned now, but I believe that the first Diablo was one of the original versions of that.
Man.
It was so cool because there were so many different classes, but it was also made before you could like respec talent trees. So of course you would have to download mods that would let you redistribute your points and stuff, so you could try out different builds. And I had the strategy guide, and then also I was just a huge, believe it or not, I was a huge fantasy nerd, and I hadn't read a lot of fantasy at the time. Mostly because there was a lot of things I wasn't allowed to read at the time. And so I dug so much into, have you ever read a old school Blizzard book? Like the instruction manuals?
Yeah.
They just had like full on like history and everything in them. I read it so many times, and then I was the only one of my friends that actually cared about the lore in Diablo 2, which is incredibly dark. And so it was like my first exposure to dark fantasy, and I was like, I gotta be edgy and cool and like all of that stuff. And then the game is okay. Maybe I'm curious where you stand on this issue. Do you miss good pixel art? Like not the stuff that's like Super Meat Boy where you intentionally it's like, low poly, or like Minecraft low poly. Like I like some of that stuff too.
I think the pixel art in Shining Force, like we were talking about yesterday, and the pixel art in Final Fantasy VI, I think the pixel art's amazing. And I think with the pixel art, being able to convey emotion through pixel art and dialogue, like written dialogue, is so much more challenging than
exactly the amount of skill that it took with these massive limitations, but still being able to pull off and the music, and then the literal, you have a literal cap on the number of pixels you can have on the screen, so you have to paint a picture with these things. Diablo 2 had a way of being incredibly brutal, incredibly bloody, and incredibly dark with this horribly bad resolution. And like that's when I played Diablo 3 for the first time, which had modern graphics. I looked at the game, I was like, why does this look like a cartoon? Like Diablo 2 felt like I was playing something metal, and this feels like I'm playing like an edgelord game.
Who did you use? Who was your main in Diablo?
So I played all the classes, but for me, I think my favorite was the druid, because he could just like summon wolves and bears, and he could turn into stuff. And by the time you get to like the last part of hell, everything is on fire and you can't see anything on the screen, so you're just like spamming all your potions and buttons to see what happens. Like it was such a chaotic game that probably has things that don't hold up, but I put so many hours into it. And even though I thought Diablo 3 was very serviceable, I'm excited for Diablo 4. I'm excited. And for one, the art style actually looks like it's supposed to be like incredibly gothic and nasty again.
Why are you excited about Diablo 4 but not Dragon Age 4? You trust Blizzard more than you trust BioWare?
At this point, yes.
Blizzard, Anthem or Andromeda, they were both not good.
Did Blizzard make Anthem?
No. I was talking about BioWare.
Oh. BioWare,
BioWare
has failed me too many times. Also, they just started sticking when they realized BioWare was a brand that people liked. EA just started sticking the BioWare name, like they were like BioWare racing games and stuff at that point. Like,
why is EA evil?
EA straight up won like most hated company.
Like there
were companies that were literally stealing people's houses, and EA were like most hated company in the world.
It sucks because EA, back when they were smaller on the Genesis, EA made some of my favorite Genesis games.
If this was not a RPG focused stream, I could go off on a massive tangent about how EA Big was like one of the greatest things going for video games, and then it died.
It was awesome. I played. There's a sports game called Mutant League Football.
I remember that.
That was so much fun. Like you'd throw the ball and like you'd tackle people and they'd explode into body parts. It was so much fun. EA was good. Now it sucks.
Well, what's the last
Make sure
EA
you
game
sign
you liked?
into the EA network before you play the game, Michael.
What's the last EA game you liked?
Probably Mass Effect. BioWare. It's BioWare games.
Wait, does EA make Nope. Well, who makes the Shadow of Mordor games?
I don't play Lord of the Rings games, Michael. You know that.
What? I didn't know that.
Oh well, I don't like Lord of the Rings.
I know, but that doesn't mean the Shadow of Mordor isn't awesome.
If I don't like Lord of the Rings, why on earth would I play a property spun from it?
Because Shadow of Mordor is the only good Assassin's Creed game.
That's not true. I'm playing
100% true.
No, it is not. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is an excellent game.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag is half of a good game because everything having to do with the pirate ships is amazing. And then the part where it's Assassin's Creed is bad.
What? Have you even played Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood?
I have played 1, 2, Brotherhood. What's the one after Revelations? I DNF'd Revelations. I played 4.
Yeah. Revelations is very good.
I kept buying them. I was some kind of idiot that kept buying them and playing them before I was like,
playing Rogue right now.
I hate this series. No.
I'm playing Rogue right now. Like it's on pause on my television.
They're so repetitive, dude. I said that and I was talking about Diablo, but still, they're so repetitive.
You're talking about one of the most repetitive grind loops.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't
So
remember.
Are we gonna have to play some Diablo 4, Michael?
I hope so. I'm a Blizzard fan, so I hope so.
Did you ever play WoW?
I I've spent a significant amount of my life in WoW, like maybe a regrettable amount.
I can mirror that exact statement. A regrettable amount of WoW did I play, and I'm sure. Are you Alliance? You seem like Alliance.
I was Alliance, of course.
Of course you were. Of course you were. Of course you were. For the Horde, Michael.
There was a period of my life between when I graduated high school and when I got like a real grown-up job.
Yeah.
When there was not a moment I was not at work where I was not in WoW.
That's correct.
Yeah. And like it was a dark time. And the unfortunate part about it was that I was dating my soon-to-be wife during that period of time, and it was dark.
How what expansion did you stop during? I stopped right before Pandaria at the end of Kata. And I started playing right at the end of Crusade.
I stopped heavy playing during Cataclysm, but I have resubbed during every expansion just to max out level.
Nice, nice. I still have a level 85 Blood Elf Shadow Priest, and man, like I got like rotation, like boss rotations are wonderful for autism spectrum because it's literally like an order to do this, then this. So man, I was racking up. Well, again, this is before they completely changed how all the classes worked in Pandaria. But man, I loved that. But I spent so much time, and especially when Blizzard's like, "Hey, you know what we could do? Let's give them achievements." And I'm like, "No,
we haven't talked to. This is an RPG. We could talk about this game."
I mean, we could talk about WoW. This can be our interlude here.
Like the dude, I have never had such insanely satisfying RPG moments as like raids that went well. Yeah. Like you bang your head on something for weeks on end, and then finally all of you succeed, and it's a shared experience with people that you've gotten to know and probably yelled at and had them yell at you. And when you finally defeat this boss, that's a big deal. It's like this cemented moment in your mind, and everything about the raid bosses that you were talking about, where there's these rotations of things where everybody has to work together, and you have your DPS, the Holy Trinity, whatever they call it, of RPGs. Like everything surrounding that has become like a metaphor for the way that I see life, frankly. Like the fact that like there is no one is more important. Everybody is different. And if you don't have all of those different people working together, you freaking fail. It doesn't matter how good you are. Yeah. Everybody has it completely different, but everyone is just as vital. And I absolutely love that metaphor for the game. I love that metaphor for life. And also, when we killed Arthas, because I was a massive Warcraft 2 and 3 fan, it was this like seminal moment in my like adulthood.
Arthas, screw that fight was tough. The Lich King fight was tough.
Yep.
Freaking tank. Don't pull aggro off the tank. That was the hardest thing to explain to DPS because they always, being in a raid. If you were in a raid guild, they all want to top the DPS charts. So that is what they're focusing on rather than people winning. And you got to yell at the DPS to be like, guys, stop pulling aggro off the tank. And then the healer gets all mad and is like, well, I'm not going to heal the DPS if they're going to pull aggro. And then they just let the DPS die. And it's just great. And don't stand in the fire. You're getting hey, move. Hey, you're in fire. Hey, what are you doing? Get out of the fire.
So, I had a friend, and I was convinced he could not. Maybe he was colorblind, and this is mean. I don't think he could see it. I don't think he could see the fire on the ground, no matter what color it was.
What race and class did you play?
I depended on the expansion because I loved both healing and tanking. So for Lich King, I was a tank mostly. And then for Pandaria, I was a healer, which was a really hard time to pick healer because they made it way harder. But I was
too stressful. So I liked Shadow Mage because I could take a lot of the pressure off of the healer by I had a lot of self heals. Yeah. So the healer didn't have to work around me. And plus, because of that, and because I could fade, like they always used to make fun of me. They'd be like, fade, because you fade and you drop aggro. The second I take aggro, boom, fade, gone. So I was always in a wipe. I was always like the next to last one up.
Nice.
So it was, and then you have people like, and I have to admit, having done this before. When you're running back, like one, you don't release and you just wait for them to get back so you don't have to make the run and res you. And then two, when you're clearing back to the raid boss and you just put someone on /F and you just auto
just don't help.
So you don't have to. I've done that before, but I tried not to do it every time.
I was a paladin tank and a shaman healer, and it was so fun, man. So fun. But it is one of those things where it really hooks into my problematic personality types, where I get really much like, well, I got to grind this gear because I don't want to be the person holding us back. And
same. Like, I cannot tell you how many times we ran those freaking kata dungeons to outfit everybody in the best freaking gear. Yep. And then, we can talk about the darker side of WoW, which is guild drama.
Oh my word, dude. That was the worst part of WoW.
The absolute worst. I've never seen anything like people getting upset over a freaking video game. Like, I've never seen anything like it. Like I ran a guild in my first MMO that I ever played was called Sony. It was Sony Vanguard Saga of Heroes. It was Sony's attempt at a new MMO after EverQuest. And I played it from day one, and it was bug filled, and there was nothing to do, and it was super boring. But I ran a guild, and freaking guild drama collapsed the guild. Like a year in, like it collapsed the guild where we had almost nothing. It was just like me and my real life friends, and it's like, oh, okay. And so we stopped and went and played WoW. And from that on, I'm like, I'm not running a guild. So a good friend of mine ran a guild, and I was an officer, and that's fine. I was happy being an officer, but the decisions were not going to fall on my head anymore. They just weren't. And man, loot. It always came down to loot. It always came down to someone getting their feelings hurt or getting mad because they did not get a piece of gear.
The last raid, the last guild that I was a part of was a real life friend group. It was primarily made up of people I knew in real life, and it blew up. And it was the last time I was part of a major guild, and it was nasty. And it wasn't about loot that everything blew up. It was because there were some people in the guild that played nonstop, and there were other people that played different amounts, and picking what the guild would spend their time on became the drama thing, because people that played all the time were like, oh, I want to go get like this cool piece of gear from the old games. The other people were like, I'm trying to catch up to like the current gear. It's like, it was a whole thing.
I gotcha. Oh man. Like I like how we went from Diablo to WoW, but WoW was so fun. I spent so much time playing WoW.
For me, the perfect, like, what I've always dreamed about video games being is like heavily story focused MMORPGs. The fact that MMORPGs are basically dead now it makes me sad half the time I think about video games.
Yeah. Everyone tried to make an MMO. Everyone. And the only two that survived really are WoW and then Final Fantasy 14.
Yep.
And pretty much everything died. And people just don't, you're actually seeing a lot of that in just video games in general, the trend. Because I remember, speaking of the Mass Effects, do you remember when every bloody game had to have some kind of online multiplayer, even freaking RPGs?
I played a lot of Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, like a lot of it.
You had to play a lot of it.
That's true. You did have to do it for the story.
Correct. They've removed that because it doesn't exist. Because we've come out of they've removed it because you no longer need it for galactic readiness or whatever. Because we've come out of this era where every game needs to have some kind of online multiplayer. And we've actually kind of gotten back to where there's a lot of games that you can play that are either only online or like couch co-op. And so we've just come out of we have more options, I think, to play with other people than just MMOs now.
Sure.
And I guess people are just busier, which is weird.
It's weird. Games Destiny takes so much from the MMO structure, but it takes out the MMO part, which is kind of like part of the awesomeness about it. Yeah.
My favorite. I never had more fun in WoW than playing Lich King. Lich King was my favorite expansion. It was so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. I believe that it's your turn to pick a game. I'll let you pick that so we don't get too
we're just gonna get through two because by the time I'm done and then you do another one, it'll be an hour. So
oh no.
WoW was a joint one. We used that. All right, let me see what I want to do this time. All All right, I'm going to go ahead and say another pretty common one since we were talking about pixel art. Let me go ahead and mention Final Fantasy VI.
Okay.
So Final Fantasy VI, or Final Fantasy III, as it was known on the Super Nintendo back when, and I remember I paid $80 for that dang thing brand new. Like, I think we forget how expensive 64 and Super Nintendo games were. Like the cartridges were freaking expensive. And this is before I had Nintendo Power, but it's before really the dawn of the internet. And I had the strategy guide, because I heard you say you had the Diablo strategy guide. Are you a strategy guide guy?
I used to be, not so much these days.
Man, I always, they don't really make guides really anymore. But if there was a guide for an RPG, I freaking had that thing, because I don't have time to play a game a bunch of times. So I get to get everything on the first run. But Final Fantasy VI, I had played one that I rented from my local video store, and then I played 2, but 3 was just it. The ability to tell an emotional story with unvoiced dialogue and pixel art was like nothing I had ever seen at that point. Like I can't remember the timeline of because I played Shining Force and Phantasy Star 4 and Secret of Mana and this game all around kind of the same time, but the sheer size of the story it was trying to tell with its 16 characters that was crazy, because they were all kind of, except for a couple, integrated into the story even more so than Shining Force. You got a lot of people to join your party in Shining Force, but they weren't all really the characters that were related to the story. But here it was just so well done, and the music was fantastic. The iconic moment that sealed it for me is the opera house scene. Did you play 6?
I have not beat any Final Fantasy.
Oh, in Final Fantasy VI, there is a time where you were trying to sneak in to. You have to sneak into. You're sneaking in to meet with some gambler and his airship, trying to get his airship, but you're trying to distract everybody. So one of your female generals trades places with the ingenue in this opera that's going on in this opera house, and she has to really quick learn the parts, and you have to make sure you're saying the lines. But it plays out, this whole opera plays out with them going whoa, 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 their mouths moving. It's just MIDI, it's MIDI talking, and the words appear, and then it's this beautiful MIDI arrangement of this female general singing this aria. The Final Fantasy VI Opera House music. It is the first time I shed a tear in a video game. It was just so moving for young Alan. Nice. I must have played that Opera House music. It was one of the first tracks that I pirated when Napster came out. It was one of the first MIDI tracks that I pirated onto a CD, because it was just so good. It's this story about, there's evil empire, and it blended that kind of tech with fantasy. The main character, Terra, she's this race, she's a half Esper, which is this race of magical beings, and she's being used by the Empire that uses them, turns them into crystals to power their machines. They're big Gundams. And so she ends up joining the underground resistance, trying to overthrow the emperor. And so not only do you have all that, it's got great characters like Edgar, a king of a neighboring city or a neighboring kingdom, who has a castle that literally can go under the desert. It can literally just disappear under the desert if it needs to hide. Seriously, it moves. The castle can move on it's ridiculous. And his brother, Sabin, looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and his special ability in battle is you input Street Fighter commands to do you can do the suplex you do down to forward. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And each character, I hated when Final Fantasy got away from each character having its own special abilities. This is one of the reasons I don't like 7. Everyone loves 7 because they love Sephiroth. Everyone loves Sephiroth and his sword and his trench coat and his hair. But in 7, because of the materia system, every character is identical. The only thing that's different is their limit break. Because materia, you can quit any skill on anybody. In Final Fantasy VI, every character had a different ability. Like Edgar has tools. He had a chainsaw that could automatically kill enemies. It was his last one. But he normally had a drill that could do a lot. You had Cyan, this noble knight whose entire castle is poisoned by the aid to the Emperor. And everyone dies. It's super dark. And his ability is he gets 1 through 9, and you have to wait as a bar charges. And the longer you wait, the enemies are hitting you. But the longer you wait, the more powerful your attack is. And also, Sabin, the guy who does the Street Fighter moves, can suplex a train. He suplexes a train in one boss fight. And
I have heard about this game.
And it just gets so dark because halfway through this game, the Emperor raises this. He raises this. This floating island from which he's going to destroy the world, right? And you go there and you stop him. And after you stop him, like you're trying to convince him, and he realizes like, oh, what have I done? I've done bad things. His aide, Kefka, kicks him off the floating island and seizes the power for himself and literally destroys the world. And the entire second half of the game, you are playing in a completely different world map because the world has been just completely ravaged by the ridiculous second-in-command clown. Like, he's literally like a jester.
I was about to ask if this was the one with the clown.
Yes. He's an insane...
That's wild.
And the MIDI, he laughs. He goes, woo, 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 woo. His MIDI laugh is just terrifying. It was just... I've never seen it before. Like, you think you're at the end of the game. Oh, no. You're halfway through. And the entire game's going to change from here on out. And you have to go, you start with, and it's dark. You start with the Lady General, who literally is trapped on an island with her mentor, Sid, who dies, and she can't find a way. And she's so filled with despair, she tries to kill herself in a freaking Super Nintendo game. Dang. And you're just filled with despair. And so you've got to go around and recollect all your party members.
Dang.
And it's so, the story it tells with non-spoken dialogue and the music, and it's just so good. It's so good. It's like, I have never played any of the remakes because they always tend to like...
they change the art heavily.
Yes. And so it's like the Super Nintendo one is just where it is at. And I had a guide and it was so fun. And it's so good. If you
that
ever
sounds
get a
incredible.
chance to play it, you need to. I know that you would like it. If you ever
I think it's on the is it on the SNES? What was it called?
Yes.
What is that thing called?
The little bitty SNES?
Yeah, the baby one.
Yeah, the baby SNES, yeah. Or I think you can get it on the Switch store, can't you? I think so.
I don't know there is a surprising number of things that they have released and other things that are not in the Switch store, and it makes me cry. Yeah,
it's literally like if it's on the Wii store, you can put it on the Switch store. If it's on the Wii U store, you can put it on the Switch store. What's the problem?
Yes, that sounds.
It's so good. Like the storyline it tells. It's literally like kind of like a multi POV fantasy book.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Man. There are so many Final Fantasy games out there, and that's the one that sounds the most interesting to me. I've heard a lot of people talk about 10. Obviously, 7 is a popular one. I've never completed any of them. I think the farthest I've gotten in them is either 7 or 13. 13 is a weird game.
13, Lightning. Oh my gosh, Lightning, and then Snow, who just he punches stuff. I did not like. The 13s were okay, and 10 is really good.
13 was where I DNF'd it when I realized I was still getting tutorials for new things at the 20-hour mark. Like there's things that happen in that game. Like the story is going on for a very long time when basically all your attacks are just like attack and there's no special abilities. And so what's paradigm shifting? That unlocks a great deal, like not percentage wise, but a great number of hours into the game.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much of this game do I have to play just spamming X, and the answer is like 20 hours before I unlock the paradigm shifting, which is the whole strategy of the game.
12 started the unfortunate trend for me in Final Fantasy games where they don't want you to be able to control all your party members, and that annoys me. Like, I like having, because in 12 you can almost control them, because the gambit system, you can set, if you set a certain amount of conditions, like if this happens, then do this. And you can add so many that it's almost like you're playing them. But 13, you don't control your party members.
No.
Like, you give them a paradigm shift and they just go. Like, you pick a paradigm and they just attack. Like, I
think either make it so you can control them all, or make it like Kingdom Hearts where you have to play action, so you can't specifically control them all.
Yeah. It's and in the 15, same thing. Like, I'm hoping that 16 will let me control all my characters, but I don't hold out hope. But anyway, I mean, 6 was so good. Like, so I love that the Opera House scene is amazing.
It sounds like in 6, every character might even have direct, like, specific inputs for attacks. Like, at least that one character has like Street Fighter type attacks, and
yeah, he's the only one that has specific inputs. Okay. Otherwise, everybody has just a kind of a different command. Like, there's one who can mimic, like he mimics, he can mimic someone else in your party. There's one that, anyone can learn different types of magic, but there's one that like jumps on monsters and learns the monsters' attacks.
Okay.
There's just a bunch. Oh, there's one that like absorbs damage and then like releases it after absorbing X amount. So it's just really, really good.
Because of games like Final Fantasy VI, have you always had a problem when you're talking to people that generally poo-poo video games with trying to express how some of those stories are like seminal and important for you, but you can't explain it to them, and when you try to, you realize that like it took 80 hours for it to absorb correctly? Like, video games that are really long that have great stories, I always have a hard time explaining them to people that especially are anti-video games, because there's the length and the time you spend with the characters and the amount of times that you hear the music and see the animations is such a massive part of the experience that if you have a bias against video games, it's going to be really hard to talk about.
Oh yeah, some of my favorite plot lines ever are from video games. In fact, I think JRPGs have shaped a lot of what I like in stories. Like, Here Comes the Cavalry, there's always that in JRPGs. Like, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like it so much, is because like that's what I grew up on. Is I've always read, but video games, I always told people it's like an interactive book. Like, it's a book that I'm playing, RPGs, because there's so much dialogue to read, especially before they were voiced. So, half the time with the voices, if I can skip it, I just read it. Like, I'll listen to it until I'm done reading it, and then I press X, move it on, X, move it on. Like, I've gotten to where I can read a text bubble real quick over the years of having to absorb, thousands upon thousands of lines of dialogue.
Before they actually created a genre just called visual novel, where you were just reading everything.
No,
you were already doing it in JRPGs.
Yeah. 100%. Oh, I love it. So good. All right, Michael.
I'll go ahead and I'll talk about you started, right? So this will be probably the last one.
I'm grabbing coffee, but I'm right.
Okay.
Here.
So I'll talk about one. I don't know if you played it or not. And it's a little bit different, but I still consider it an RPG. Deus Ex Human Revolution. This is a weird choice, but I have not played the original Deus Ex games, and I have not played whatever the sequel was. Whatever it was. Deus Ex Human Revolution was a game that I picked up in what was that thing? Gamefly. It was like the Netflix mailing service of video games. It was like there was a period of my life where I first got married where it was an awesome deal, because I didn't have a ton of money, but I had the money to do that, and I wanted to play a bunch of different games. So I would get games. Sometimes I would play them for like an hour and DNF them and just mail them back. I did that with Rage. I didn't think that Rage was a very
Rage was game. Terrible.
It was it was not very good. Deus Ex Human Revolution, I remember it got some good reviews, mostly middling reviews. I put it in and I was like, oh wait, I like this game. And the more I played it, the more that I realized that it did a lot of what other people claim to do in their games, which is, hey, if you want to approach a situation in more than one way, we're going to give you that opportunity for real. This is not like, we're not lying about it. It's not like you sometimes it's like, oh, there's 3 different paths. Depending on what way you do it, you get this path. It's kind of like that, but way more intricate. It actually feels like your fleshed out character is making decisions that allow you to take different paths through the game physically and story-wise. Did you play this game?
I did not. I actually never. Okay, so Deus Ex is a game I heard a lot about when I worked at GameStop. Like they always it's
the first one.
It's like a critical darling, the Deus Ex game.
Yeah.
Like
yes.
I know when the new one came out, like everyone was freaking out but I had never played it, and so I don't know. I don't even know what it's about or what the game is. But I did use GameFly also. That's actually how I discovered the SMT games was through GameFly.
Nice. So the Deus Ex Human Revolution is. It's a world where everybody has, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know the original, but Deus Ex Human Revolution exists in a world where regular people can pay money to get biological improvements of some sort. And it has to do with the politics of the safety of that, the ethics of that. And you're also like, I think you're a private military corporation working for some, like, it's one of those very much dystopian. Everything is run by private military corporations that are also like
PMCs.
Everything. Yeah, it's very, very. What's the
Metal Gear
Solid? Yeah,
Metal Gear Solid. You know PMCs from Metal Gear because that's where I learned that.
The only Metal Gear game that I've completed is 5. But I've watched playthroughs of at least 1 and 2 all the way through.
Okay,
I think
a hot take: 3 is the best one. Snake Eater's so good.
I don't know. I don't even know what I can say about that because I don't know the general consensus there.
Well, anyway, in Metal Gear they talk about PMCs all the time.
So it's weird. The more time goes by, the more Deus Ex Human Revolution feels like the type of sci-fi that was prophecy. Like when everybody talks about old sci-fi, that's like, oh, this is real life now.
Yeah.
Like corporations taking over everything, and then the way that you find out that the news is being generated by these corporations, and it's just you think it's a real person, but it's really an AI that's reporting everything, and they literally control the entire world through news.
Oh my god.
Like it's this freaking wild story where you get and it was weird because the boss fights are the worst part of that game because they require you to just use guns and play the game like a shooter, which it wasn't great at that. But outside of the boss fights, everything else is about like maneuvering your way through everything with either your hacking skills or your physical like ability to just like climb over stuff or jump really high or do whatever. You've got all these things in this story that's really real, and then Deus Ex Human Revolution does a thing that I think about way too often, which also may make me like psychologically a problem, but interactions like NPC dialogue trees with important characters in Deus Ex Human Revolution, they gamified it. So when you're talking with somebody one-on-one, it's actually an encounter, almost like a Dungeons and Dragons encounter. Mm-hmm. But it's more real time than something like Mass Effect, where you can see their pulse, you can see like their skin, whether they're sweating, you can see their facial expressions, almost like that one. What's
LA Noire,
kind of, but it's more graphs because of course you are an augmented human. You can see all these things.
Gotcha.
But then you can choose to manipulate the dialogue to have the characters do what you want them to do. Like it's less about telling them the truth or role playing a character and more like looking at their reactions and then saying the things that get them to want to react the way that you want them to.
Wow, that's cool.
So it's weird, and it's the idea of like, now every time I work at an internet service provider, and every time I go into a meeting with either competitors or potential partners in these things, the way that I envision these conversations is I'm seeing the conversations as if I'm having a dialogue in Deus Ex Human Revolution, because you're reading everything that they're saying, the tone that they're saying it in, and you want to try to convince them that you have a good product or that you have a good idea or whatever. Unlike in Deus Ex Human Revolution, you don't want to just lie. In Deus Ex Human Revolution, you can try to just lie. But like the idea that one-on-one personal interactions are not just something that's like you can't just throw it away.
Yeah.
Me having a conversation with the potential boss of this level, and it could result in it could result in you having to fight them. It could result in them killing themselves. It could result in them just full on becoming your partner or some neutral thing in between. Like the fact that they made conversations gameplay in a way that games sometimes want to, but they don't. It's not just a D&D dice roll. It's active was so cool. And then that and the whole story element. Also, I think at the end of the game, one of the endings is the world gets nuked and everyone dies. But it was like one of those where like it's kind of Mass Effect-y where there's 3 different potential options, but one of them is everyone just dies.
Yeah.
But that game is another one of those games that I didn't full complete. I completed everything except one side quest because I didn't realize it was before games told you were entering the final sequence.
Oh.
And so there was one side quest I missed.
It didn't let you run around after the ending?
No, not okay. This is way too long. I don't know if we could talk about this with the amount of time that we have left because we've just busted the hour mark.
Oh, should we save it?
I'll say one thing, and if we want to talk about it next time, we can. I don't like when you have a massive juxtaposition between the story telling you something is urgent, but it not being urgent. I want, if somebody tells me that something has to happen now, I don't want them to give me options to go save somebody's cat out of a tree.
So you don't like any JRPG?
Well, open world games in general can be a real struggle for me.
Oh,
and I want to someday. I want to have a conversation. Someday in the future, we can have a conversation about the problems with this and potential workarounds. But obviously, time for that.
No, that conversation thing that sounds so cool because the D&D dice roll thing is, I don't even know why they have that as a mechanic, because every single person, when there's a dice roll, like in, if it's Fallout or Oblivion or whatever, like every single person makes a save, tries to do it. Oh, you failed, reload. You just do it until you get it.
Well, if you've played enough RPGs, if there's a convince or speech option, you know that you should probably take that because it's going to open up your possibilities.
I always try to take persuade over intimidate, but if I have to intimidate, I will. If I gotta flex on somebody, I'll do it.
Especially Renegade Shepherd's going to do that.
Renegade Shepherd's going to punch that reporter. Is what Renegade Shepherd's going to do. Sorry that our Mass Effect talk took 20 minutes, and then our Diablo /WoW talk took 20 minutes.
Listen, okay. I think we've talked about this privately. I don't know if we talked about this on the stream. This show, whatever you want to call it, is therapeutic for me. It's valuable for me. It helps. I had a bad couple days. This helps me a lot. So instead of like always thinking about this as just being we should probably talk about these topics.
Yeah.
The act of having a conversation with one of my friends about something that I love to talk about is the joy here. And I hope that comes across to people that are watching the video. It seems like the first.
So fun.
It seems like the first one was well received. So I don't think we need to be like, complaining that we're having too much fun talking about the things we love.
We still got 5 left.
We're halfway done.
Halfway. 2 hours to get halfway there, Michael.
Oh my goodness. Okay, if you guys have not checked out Alan's channel, I don't know how you found my channel because I feel like Alan, everybody knows who Alan is, but you should go subscribe to him. He also has the first episode of this on his channel. Also, if you don't happen to be subscribed to this channel, you can as well. Links to everything down below. I think that's all I'll say.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time.
See you again next week or time, whenever we do it.